Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our October Node meeting in the month of November. And it is virtual this month because today is election day and our normal meeting location has become a very important voting location. So just remember, if you have not scheduled it on your calendar today, get out and vote. We have to exercise that. Especially in the times that we are in today. But I want to thank you and welcome you to this meeting, Northeast Ohio Development Exchange. And I cannot go further without first thanking Ellen for that wonderful selection of economic developers' greatest hits. If you ever have the opportunity to present at one of our Node meetings virtually, we will always ask, what is your favorite hit? And Ellen chose Get It Together by Seal, which I thought was a great number for us to listen to as we open up this meeting today. But let me first by just stating, my name is Renee Lagan. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Engagement with Team NEO. And Team NEO, we are the Jobs Ohio Network partner. We hope to create equitable, fair wage paying jobs here in our region through our business retention and expansion efforts, leveraging the Jobs Ohio programs. So as we begin, let me first just introduce Ellen. We have a tremendous amount of grant funding now available from the federal government. And that means we have an unprecedented opportunity to impact the communities that we serve. And Ellen, she is the Economic Development Representative for Ohio from the Economic Development Administration. She will provide an overview of the EDA and outline opportunities for our communities to tap into this funding, along with some helpful tips. And at this time, I'm going to turn this program over to Ellen. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you so much, Team NEO and Node partners. It's great to be here. One of the fun things about being able to share information today is I'm sharing information from my home, which is in Norwalk, Ohio. So glad to live in part of Ohio, kind of part of between Northeast and Northwest Ohio. So great. Well, let's advance and go to our next slide, Renee. So as Renee mentioned today, I want to give you a general overview of the Economic Development Administration, some of our general programs, but also then to focus on the ARPA dollars that have been recently announced. So the primary mission of the Economic Development Administration is to lead the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness, preparing American regions for growth and success in the worldwide economy. We work directly with communities and regions to help them build economic development capacity by targeting its competitive, merit-based investments to assist economically distressed regions in creating higher paying, sustainable jobs, support bottom-up, regionally owned economic development initiatives, serve as strategic catalytic seed investments, attract and leverage private capital investment, and promote innovation, entrepreneurship, and regional competitiveness. If you didn't know it already, and some of you might have participated in OEDA's annual conference last week, EDA's region that we're sitting in right now is the Chicago region. And that's part of the 6-state area, including Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. In regards to Ohio, to give you a better idea of our footprint and what it looks like, compared to some of the other states in the neighboring vicinity, is we've got 88 counties, as you all know. And in Ohio, we only have 5 economic development districts. They're really terrific and strong partners that we've enjoyed working with for many years. But those partnerships and those districts only cover about 1/3 of the state. Our current economic development districts are Eastgate, Nefco, OVRDC, Buckeye Hills, and Omega. And you can see the map behind me, the colored areas, which is not too easy to see, that are covered by the economic development districts represent just over 1/3 of Ohio. The great news is within the last 12 months, we have awarded regional CEDS projects. And I'll go into what a SEDS is in just a few minutes in case you're not familiar with that. And those partners are doing a terrific job of working collaboratively with their counties and their regions to really develop this more comprehensive plan. So who does EDA exactly serve and receives our investments? We provide competitive merit-based grants and technical assistance to public-private partnerships, state and local governments, tribal organizations, universities, and nonprofits in economically distressed communities. We do not fund or provide investments to for-profit entities, nor do we allow pass-through of grant funds to private or for-profit companies. A couple of items are bolded on this slide to really draw attention to the fact that EDA is really looking at investing in long-term transformational projects. Typically, infrastructure is one of the biggest areas that we've invested in. Our investments require significant match for regular program funds, as much as a 50% match. And when we talk about the ARPA dollars, we'll go over that match percentage. EDA grantees must demonstrate how they will create and retain private sector jobs and increase private investment. And this competitiveness is demonstrated again through the creation of jobs. It's really critical when you're looking at applying for EDA. It's not just communities that need a new water line upgrade, it's that water line upgrade will actually help create or retain jobs or recover from a natural disaster. Who is an eligible applicant? State, county, tribal, local government, and special purpose units, institutions of higher education, and shouldn't say any, but most nonprofit organizations or associations that are acting in cooperation with a unit of local government. What are some things EDA cannot do? No grant awards, as I mentioned earlier, for-profit organizations. No grant awards for infrastructure owned by a for-profit organization. No infrastructure on land that was acquired through eminent domain. And no grant awards to nonprofits to be used to purchase equity stakes in for-profit entities. When EDA looks at competitive grants and strong projects, we want them to align as closely with our investment priorities as possible. That might just be, maybe your project would be in alignment with 2 or 3 of the investment priorities. I actually have worked with applicants that have met almost all, if not all, of the investment priorities. It's not necessary, but just to give you a little bit more information, these are our top investment priorities: equity, recovery and resiliency, technology-based economic development, environmentally sustainable development, workforce development, manufacturing, exports, and foreign direct investment. So the next few slides are going to break down the information just to clarify, to make sure everybody has a clear understanding. Equity is our top investment priority, and economic development planning or implementation projects that advance equity across America through investments that will directly benefit one or more traditionally underserved populations, underserved communities within geographies that have been systematically or systemically denied a full opportunity to participate in aspects of economic development and prosperity. Recovery and resiliency. This is an important area as well. When we're looking at applications, we're looking at a few things for projects. We want applicants to illustrate what their issue is, demonstrate how their project is going to fix it, validate that through facts or war notices or data, and then demonstrate how that's going to make the community resilient in the future. Workforce development. We're looking at economic development planning or implementation projects that support workforce education and skills training activities directly connected to the hiring and skills needs of the business community that result in well-paying quality jobs. A question that we get somewhat frequently is what exactly is well-paying or high quality or high-paying jobs? Those are definitely the types of jobs that we're targeting, but we also look at the local regional economy. And if that regional economy is heavily focused on tourism rather than manufacturing or high-paying IT jobs, we certainly will take that into consideration. manufacturing, any kind of projects that focus on manufacturing job creation, sustainability, and help the manufacturing industries become more competitive. Also, the growth of domestic suppliers or to the domestic production of innovative high-value products and production technologies. Technology-based economic development, projects that foster regional knowledge ecosystems that support entrepreneurs and startups, including the commercialization of new technologies that are creating technology-driven businesses and high-skilled, well-paying jobs of the future. Environmentally sustainable development, projects that address the climate crisis through the development and implementation of green products, processes, including green infrastructure, places, and buildings. And then exports and foreign direct investments, projects that enhance or build community assets to support growth in U.S. exports or increased foreign direct investment. So when you're looking at applying to EDA for projects, dollars to implement your project, to even to do a study, what would make your application competitive? We're looking for a confirmed match that will be available for the duration of the project. Certainly a cash match makes a very strong and competitive application. Geographic distribution, making sure that we are able to fund projects in economically distressed areas throughout the region. Return on investment, jobs, private sector investment, regional partnerships. Is it aligned with the regional partners? Do you have support letters from those in your community that are very encouraging of the project? Is the project part of your regional strategy, and does it meet EDA investment priorities? This goes into a little bit more detail about your matching share of the slide. Is it documented? Again, do you have important language in there that we're looking for as outlined on the slide? Is it available and unencumbered and available for use? Are there any strings attached, any dollars or outstanding loans or issues with the match that you're providing? And then looking at the source of funds. You could have local philanthropic funds for part of your match. You can also have state funds and private for-profit and lending institution funds. Most of our programs don't allow a federal match or very limited federal dollars that it can be matched with. And certainly if you have a project idea, I encourage you to reach out to myself or one of our economic development districts, and we can go through and make sure not only is your project eligible, but your match funding source as well. So these are some of the more specific and more traditional EDA programs. We have our Public Works Assistance Program. It has a rolling review process, which means the money is available until it's gone. We don't have hard deadlines for that, but certainly we have utilized all of the dollars within our funding cycles. It looks to build and construct economic development infrastructure and facilities. So water lines, sewer improvements, those are some of our typical public works assistance projects we'll fund. Again, it has to be tied to job creation and can't be tied specifically to the project unless it can't just be an improvement of a water line, unless you can tie job creation and retention to the investment in the project. Economic adjustment assistance. This assistance under our regular programs is available to assist regions suffering from a natural or economic disaster. It can also help fund a strategy or implementation project. And it also has a rolling review process. Some additional EDA programs that I think are just outstanding are our Assistance to Coal Communities project, our program, and our nuclear closure communities. So just as a quick informational piece, the nuclear closure communities program is not only for communities that have a nuclear plant that has closed or will be closing, but it can also help engage stakeholders and help fund projects to look at the long-term planning. So in the event that a nuclear plant is closed or there is downsizing, that you have a strategy and a plan in place to help make your community resilient for the future. And then of course, disaster recovery through FEMA. One of the areas that EDA likes to fund projects as well is our planning assistance. I think our short and long-term planning programs really provide a lot of opportunities for community, not only to recover, but maybe for an economic recovery strategy. Also looking at certain industry sectors and how you can enhance your local economy and help, again, make it stronger for the future. Our local technical assistance program can be designed to have studies, to fund studies that are industry cluster strategies, implementation of targeted strategies, pilot programming for a limited time. And these programs are also utilize a rolling review process. Is your area eligible? Under our regular program funds, there are two major categories that we look at. Obviously, we're always looking at distress. Is your area eligible in regards to distress? This is how we look at it. Do you have a high unemployment rate? Is the 24-month unemployment rate for the region greater than 1% of the national average? Is there a low per capita income? Is it less than 80% of the national average? Or is there a special need? Have you had a sudden and severe unemployment event? Do you have a major company closing or downsizing, or has there been a natural disaster? And if you haven't been there already, I'd highly recommend you go to www.statsamerica.org. Lots of very helpful data that we utilize to determine if a project is eligible. So we look at distress, and the second criteria under regular program funds that we look at is your project in alignment with a comprehensive economic development strategy. Next slide, please. So your regional strategy. This is a fundamental piece for EDA. We want to make sure that we're funding projects that aren't just transactional, but that they're transformative and transformational. How does that happen? Well, we're looking at funding projects that are in your long-term vision and planning for your community and for your region. So we look at under the public works and economic adjustment implementation projects, they all must be consistent with the relevant comprehensive economic development strategy. What does it mean by relevant? It means that it has to be current. It has to be updated or newly created within the last few years. And it also has to cover your community. It needs to demonstrate the project's alignment with the regional SEDS or equivalent EDA accepted economic development strategies, goals, and objectives. We consider the SEDS as really your roadmap for your community's success, not only now, but in the future. Proposals have to specifically be prioritized in the SEDS, and those make your application more competitive. So for example, if you have a comprehensive economic development strategy in your area, and the Cleveland area has just recently been awarded one through NOACA's application, and if infrastructure is identified as one of those critical top pillars of success for the future in the area, then your project quite possibly would align with the SEDS for your region once it is completed. When we look at project information, we're looking at very simple: who, what, where, when, why, and how information. Who's the applicant, and are they eligible for EDA funds? What's the project? We want to add a water line, or we want to invest in a workforce development center, or we want to invest in an area incubator, accelerator. Where is the project going to be? It's going to be community X owns this building, and that's where they want the, let's say, workforce development center to take place. So possibly they might need money to rehabilitate the structure or even to build a new structure. But our funds are not utilized primarily for any kind of property acquisition or building acquisition. When will the project take place? Is it shovel ready? Can it wait to start until the application process has been completed and the application has been thoroughly reviewed? What's that time frame? If you are awarded money, can you start? And what do those time frames look like? And then why? Why should your project be funded? How will it make your community resilient for the future? And to the right, we've got some general information: total project cost, course, the EDA grant amount you'd be requesting, what's your match amount, the source of match. And we think it makes your application definitely more competitive if you can have layered matching sources or multiple sources of your match. That's not a requirement. A community can have a cash match as well, just solely coming from the community. What kind of job creation is there and available and tied to the project? We look at private investment and then also look at that distress eligibility, the SEDS consistency, and who are the economic development partners in your region that will be supporting your project. For example, you might be partnering with the Chamber of Commerce. So we'd want to know, how are they going to be part of your project? Maybe they're going to promote the new Workforce Development Center if it's funded.
So Ellen, we've got a question here
Sure.
from Mark Hansel. Is there any interest or in funding or refunding local revolving loan funds?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So you can find more specific information about our revolving loan fund program on eda.gov. We've got some great samples and additional information there. And certainly I'm happy to talk to him and in his community about some considerations that we look for. It definitely is a process, and you need to make sure that you have a substantial match for the project and to get that revolving loan fund started. But we have many communities across the United States that have utilized our revolving loan fund program and done an outstanding job getting money in the hands of businesses who need it to create jobs and create investment. And certainly, you know, there are opportunities to add to that. The Urban League was received an award in the Cleveland area within the last 12 months to help fund a project. We did also award a community in the Cuyahoga County to add to their revolving loan fund program. So that's definitely a priority for us as well. And we really look at the community's ability to administer such a program. Not only do they have the money to help with the match, but also can they effectively manage and administer the program. Great question. So thinking big at EDA, I've just given you some general framework of our programs, the type of projects we like to fund. And really for that next step is the ARPA funds, right? This is big, exciting dollars that are really directly targeted to infuse our national economy and bring forth transformational change and really give communities the opportunity to apply for those dollars directly and to come up with some very creative solutions. So the American Rescue Plan programs will address larger projects than before, gives EDA the opportunity, again, like I said, to transform communities across the country. The American Rescue Plan programs will also expand EDA's reach. EDA will engage and impact more communities with support and equitable recovery. EDA will also help Americans build back better through community-led economic development. So $3 billion, right? This is just an unprecedented amount that has been infused to, again, bring forth great change and recovery. So we like to categorize this into 3 sections: our jobs for today through the Good Jobs Challenge, travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation; communities built for all, economic adjustment assistance, indigenous communities, and coal communities commitment; and regions for the future, build back better regional challenge in the statewide planning, research, and networks. These are the 6 major programs. We've got the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, which we're very excited to announce, if you didn't see it already on Friday, that over 520 applications were received for phase 1 of Build Back Better. This national competition received an enormous amount of interest, and I believe Ohio alone had 16 applications submitted for phase 1. If you go to our website, eda.gov, you'll be able to search in there and find out and see the list of what communities and areas across the United States actually submitted a phase 1 proposal. The Good Jobs Challenge, that's also another national competition, which the deadline is not until early in 2022. our Economic Adjustment Assistance Program. That's additional dollars with more flexibility and a better match or a stronger match for regular programs. We've got Indigenous community funds, travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation, and then our statewide planning, research, and networks dollars. So the next slide is going to break down those dollar amounts. For the statewide planning and research networks, $90 million is designated. That money is to invest in economic plans, research to assess the effectiveness of EDA's programs, and support for stakeholder communities around key EDA initiatives. Build Back Better, as I briefly mentioned earlier, is to transform 20 to 30 economically distressed regions through substantial investment through groups of 3 to 8 projects totaling $25 to $75 million per region. And within that $1 billion, $100 million is specifically set aside for coal communities. The third program, travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation, $750 million has been allocated to accelerate communities impacted by COVID-related travel and tourism decline through state grants. $510 million directly were the non-competitive grants, and competitive grants are $240 million. The economic adjustment assistance dollars, we've got $500 million in that program, and invest in infrastructure, technical assistance, planning, and revolving loan programs through competitive grants available to every community. Within that $500 million, $200 million is set aside for coal communities. The Indigenous communities, $100 million is going towards additional economic adjustment assistance funds to specifically support Indigenous communities. And number 6, the Good Jobs Challenge, $500 million is in this very exciting program, and it's set aside to help establish or strengthen regional systems to train workers with in-demand skills through employer-driven training, supporting participants with wraparound services and employer commitments to hire. Within that $500 million, $300 million is going directly towards coal communities.
So Ellen, you've got another question here.
Yes.
Can these dollars fund internship initiatives that will lead into jobs?
For the Good Jobs Challenge?
It does not state which one, but that's the question.
Okay, well, great. Certainly, whoever sent in that question, I encourage them to reach out to me directly after the call. Within the Good Jobs Challenge, we've got a lot of the details in that program listed on our website. I'm going to go over that a little bit more at the end.
And she said, or whoever it is, said in general terms, just in general terms, can any of the internships or fund internship initiatives that will lead into jobs just in general?
I don't think I've seen any applications since I've been with EDA in the last year for during our regular program funds to actually fund what I think that the person who asked the question was asking. But again, I'm happy to go into more detail with them and follow up with them on that.
And so for the sake of this, Ellen, how might one define Indigenous communities for this program?
That specifically is on our website, and Ohio does not have any Indigenous communities identified. It's typically the tribal communities. Mm-hmm. And we do have a number of those within our Chicago region. But again, I don't believe we have any identified in Ohio. So. In summary, for ARPA programs, we've got $3 billion available. $300 million is specifically directed towards coal communities. So if you're a qualified coal community, not only could you have access to those specific funds, but also to the non-coal community funds. 25% is targeted towards the tourism sector, up to 80% matching grants with ARPA. And ARPA does, it also grants some flexibility in regards to the SEDS requirement. We are able to look at a SEDS alternative. It certainly has to be a substantial and significant plan that we can tie your project to and that your project is aligning to, but that is something we can look at. And then you would go to apply at grants.gov and select the appropriate notice of funding opportunity. ARPA grants must be awarded by the end of September in 2022, and all projects have to be completed by September 2027. Projects must be consistent with the Economic Development District's SEDS and EDA investment priorities. And again, if your community does not fall into an economic development district, which many in Northeast Ohio do not, then you have to find an alternative SEDS to align with for your project. These I feel are some helpful resources for everybody on the call today. If you haven't been there, I highly encourage you to go to eda.gov. I've got bolded out in that first section, the EDA distribution list and newsletter. So you can sign up to be on the distribution list and select what information you'd like to receive. And I think at a minimum, looking at a regional newsletter and then also signing up for project announcements. I really find this as a great tool to discover what other projects are being funded throughout the United States. I think there's some extremely creative ideas. So not only are you trying to keep in touch and see what projects are being funded, but get a better idea of some innovative things going on across the United States. The notice of funding opportunity, that is actually the structured document and guidelines for each of our programs. Within that notice of funding opportunity, you'll find all the details and requirements of what you can and can't apply for under that specific NOFO. For SEDS information, we also have great videos, SEDS library to look at some best practice examples and to get you a better idea if your community doesn't currently have a SEDS or you're not included in a regional SEDS, what it is, what we're looking for, and how it can help transform your community and create that roadmap to success. And then it also provides a list of the economic development district partners, and that is where you would go to link to the application submittal. In regards to specific ARPA dollars and ARPA funds, I think EDA has done an amazing job preparing the United States and our communities to consider the ARPA funds, to look clearly at the programs and to find out, which program might be best suited for that community and that project. On www.eda.gov/ARPA, you'll find a one-page overview, the notice of funding information and webinars for the specific programs, FAQ sheets, and other applicant support tools.
So
Ellen,
I've got a quick question here.
Sure.
It's from Barrett, and it states, can you explain a little more about EDDs and why we might want to start one?
Oh, great question, Barrett. That's right. So our economic development districts are truly our partners, our feet on the ground. They're generally tied to planning organizations, but we do have an assortment of different types of organizations that have our anchor economic development districts within the United States. And I think it provides really an enormous amount of resource and tools. And when I was working in local economic development, I've spent about a third of my career in local economic development, a third in the private sector in manufacturing, and then about a third in workforce development and education. And back to the time when I was in local economic development, my community was not covered by an economic development district. So I really didn't have much familiarity with EDA, with the programs and the opportunities there. And really the economic development districts, they do, for the most part, receive some funding from EDA, but primarily they are there to be a tremendous resource to the communities they serve. They can help with grant applications, they can help with data, they can help really making sure your projects are aligned with what we're looking at if you want to apply for one of our funding programs. And also, I believe the SEDS component is a huge piece. Our economic development districts, one of the requirements is to have an active and current SEDS that has met our requirement process and been approved by EDA. And I also think that's a great tool and benefit as well. I was fortunate enough to work with the local SEDS when I was in economic development, but definitely having a regional SEDS and having something strong that your partners can align with, I think is a tremendous tool. So while I can't, obviously every community and region has to make their own decision if they apply and if they want to have an economic development district, but I certainly encourage it. I don't see any negatives from it. It is a little bit of a heavy lift, but it's really not that long of a process. And I think we're doing a lot of things within our organization and agency to streamline that. Again, when you look at my very simple map behind you see about a third of Ohio, just over a third, is covered by economic development districts. So that leaves a huge portion of Ohio that's not covered. And when you look at areas that have received EDA grants in the past and funding support, they primarily have fallen within those economic development districts. So the 4 regions that have received funding from EDA for a SEDS project within the last 12 months, we've got Cleveland, we've got the Columbus region, we've got the Dayton region, also the Maumee Valley region and Toledo region have received funding of one kind of another for SEDS or workforce development strategies. So they're really utilizing this time. And I do feel personally that the pandemic has caused people to take another look back at, okay, what can we do to move our communities forward? We're all thinking about those constituents in our area, those that we don't talk to necessarily every day, but you all feel that weight on your shoulders of how the local economy is doing. If you've got a plant closing or you're trying to attract a new business, you're worried that people in your community won't have jobs in that way forward so they can sustain their families. And I truly believe the SEDS is that foundational piece for that roadmap to success. And then as you go further into that SEDS with an economic development district to support that and to support the needs of the region and really be looking out from a wider perspective and a different viewpoint, I see it as a very positive thing.
So Ellen, for those who might be considering applying for a grant, have you have any recommendations in terms of major disqualifiers or things that you see that they need to consider when applying that others might miss when they do apply that kind of just disqualifies?
Great question, Renee. Definitely the job creation and retention and investment piece. And I can't say that strongly enough, because when the ARPA dollars were announced, which is certainly a terrific opportunity for our region, a lot of communities called and said, well, you know what, we need a new water line, but the water line was really only going to serve residential properties. And we don't do residential projects. Everything we do is targeted towards enhancing and strengthening your local economy. So if there is not job creation tied to it, or if it's not significant job creation, that's probably something you need to look at another funding source for. If you can flip to the next slide, Renee, and then we'll flip back to this one. Is my role as your economic development representative is to help connect you to resources that we have within EDA. And certainly if you call and your project would not be an eligible or a strong fit for one of our funding programs, we can see if there's another one we can direct you to. One of the unique things that my role does is we can actually not only help you work through the process and see, is your project eligible? Do you have site control? But then again, what else can we do to help make your application as competitive as possible? In our Chicago region, each state has their own economic development representative, and they're living within the state. So, not only does there have to be job creation and investment tied to it, but Renee, some other things are, do you have site control? Are you looking to make improvements to an area that is not owned by your community? And that's definitely something that frequently disqualifies applicants from applying to EDA. If they don't have that site control, or at least a majority of the site control, if they don't have a match available, again, if they can't tie job creation investment to your project, those are, and certainly the distress in the SEDS within our regular program funds. So within, once those ARPA dollars are gone, we will have hopefully a regular fiscal allocation if it is approved by the government. And within those dollars, before CARES and ARPA, we had a lot fewer dollars to spend. So the requirements for EDA funds were very strict. You had to have a SEDS in place, and you have to meet the distress criteria. And really a lot of communities within Ohio, especially before the funding of some of those major SEDS that's gone on within the last 12 months, many of the communities would not have been eligible to apply for EDA funds. So using those ARPA dollars, not only to be strategic, those projects that you need to get done today to help retain and create jobs, but also looking forward to, okay, well, how can we leverage these dollars to do an industry study, to do a recovery coordination plan, to have a SEDS so that we're positioned well into the future to tap into not only additional funds, but even if there aren't additional funds, so that your community really knows which direction it's headed and has all the right resources in place.
So 2 follow-up questions, Ellen. You talk about one of the qualifiers being the distressed area or sudden unemployment that you mentioned earlier before. So if if a city perhaps is not in a distressed area, but they've had sudden unemployment due to COVID, would that be a qualifier or a disqualifier?
Yes, that's a great point. Could absolutely be a qualifier, not only due to COVID and the pandemic, but pre-pandemic. If your community had a major employer announce it was closing or major downsizing, that's certainly something that could potentially qualify your community to be considered. So we look at that 24-month unemployment rate. Is your community have a greater than 1% of the national average for that period? Or do they have less than 80% of the per capita income? Or another distress qualifier? And certainly being, having a former coal fire plant in your community, or being, near a coal mine, or having a nuclear plant somewhere, in your near vicinity, plant closings, and again, natural disasters. All of those could be a qualifier for EDA funds.
And when you talk about job creation, are there types of jobs that might be disqualified for this? For example, low wage paying retail serving. What's the qualification for that as well?
Great, another great, outstanding question. One of the unique things about EDA is that we try to take a look at the situation on a case-by-case basis. So there is not a specific formula you have to meet. You don't have to create jobs at a minimum of $60,000 per job. So you have to create an increase of your annual payroll of at least $600,000. We don't have a formula like that because we do try to look at it on a case-by-case basis. So when you're often looking at distress, you might find distress in larger MSAs, but you also might find distress in rural communities. We're very cognizant of the fact that, maybe a smaller community in a part in Southwest Ohio or wherever that community is, and maybe they only have 2 larger manufacturing companies, and the larger one being 200 jobs has to close. Well, that 200 jobs, compared to communities with employers with thousands of employees, it might not look that big, but we consider that very closely and look at that impact to the community versus just that number alone. So I think it really benefits the communities to not have an exact formula that we fit, but certainly it has to make sense. If somebody comes in and asks for $5 million for a water line project and they say they can only create 5 jobs, that's not going to be a competitive project. But definitely it's a very critical piece. So, and then back to your point on, okay, well, Ellen, you said 200 jobs, might make the case, or, 50 jobs or whatever the distress criteria is. When you look at it on a case by case basis for smaller communities, we do look at obviously wanting to retain the higher paying, high wage, sustainable income types of positions. But if that community only has retail, or it only has travel and tourism, and they've been significantly hit by the pandemic, that's certainly something that we can look into. So I'd highly encourage anybody, if they feel like they've had a major distress event happen within their community, to contact and reach out to EDA. So we have, obviously, with the ARPA dollars, that grants a more flexible eligibility due to the pandemic that everybody has faced. But certainly even beyond when these ARPA dollars are gone, to reach out and see if that's something we can work on. In fact, I was just talking to a project applicant yesterday, and we kept zooming out on the map and looking at what areas would be impacted by the waterline project. And there was some additional community-owned land that they wanted to market to a new industrial user. And that's something that made the project more competitive. So I think reaching out, having that discussion with area partners and economic development districts, it certainly can help really strengthen an applicant's position, but also help them be more informed on what types of projects we can and can't work with. I don't know if there are any other questions.
Nope, we can keep moving.
Awesome.
Wrong way. There we go.
Great. Well, I think this is our last, the last slide other than my contact information. But just in closing, you know, again, EDA is really looking for not just a transactional project. Boy, you know, there's money available, so let's find a project we connect to. But what's going to be transformational for your community? In some communities, that might be a water line. Some communities that might be an additive manufacturing incubator. It could be an accelerator. It could be a workforce development center. You know, and actually we have some very interesting studies that some applicants are applying to do. A couple of other things in closing is to keep in mind, there might be an opportunity to help move your community forward through investing in a study. And maybe that study might be tied to a position. Maybe you don't have capacity to have somebody coordinate the recovery of your community. Sometimes we could look at projects that would include both of those. And definitely, you know, whatever the situation is that's happening, if you feel like one of our EDA programs might help your community recover and then become more resilient, I highly encourage you to reach out, and looking forward to have those conversations.
So this has been great, Ellen. So while others who are still on the line, we still have quite a few here. Please form your questions and put them in the Q&A. And while you're doing that, while we're waiting for any additional questions, Ellen, what about the timing? Can you speak to the timing and the process, and what is the expectation for that?
Thank you so much, Renee. Yes, so most of our programs are a rolling application process, meaning that the funds, you know, you can apply for grant funds as long as the funds are still available. We talked about Build Back Better and the Good Jobs Challenge, which are national competitions, and those have very specific deadlines, and that information can be found on our website. And then I do want to note, though, for the travel and tourism competitive dollars that our region has, we have $26.2 million to split between 6 states. And I've had a lot of interest in travel and tourism dollars because it hasn't been an area that we've typically funded projects in the Chicago region, just because the dollars we've had have been limited. And so they're mostly going towards those advanced manufacturing and higher paying, high wage jobs. But now with this travel and tourism opportunity, and really recognizing the great significance it plays in our local economies, these are exciting dollars. And again, looking for transformational, more along the lines of infrastructure projects. Certainly, you know, not looking to fund things that would be ineligible cost, but of the people that have reached out, a lot of the projects they're talking about are $2 and $3 and $4 million projects. So I would highly encourage anybody who's looking at applying for any of the ARPA dollars to reach out to myself. If you know of other colleagues in other states, you belong to international organizations, have them reach out to their economic development representatives. The money, I do believe, will go quickly. We've had an enormous amount of interest, not only in the travel and tourism, but in the ARPA dollars, and we'll start to have those investment review committees soon. But I think the other key piece is reaching out and finding out would your project be eligible, what could make your application strong, and then also, you know, finding out what it's going to take to put your application together. I don't believe it's too overwhelming. There's certainly, for construction projects, there's more information that you have to put together than the non-construction projects, but certainly it is very doable, and we're there to work with you on it. But for EDA, you want to make sure you have as tight and as strong as an application as possible before it's submitted, because it is a highly competitive process.
So we do have a question, Ellen, and it looks like it's coming from one of our senator's offices, and it states, do you mind providing more details about the process of conducting studies? is there an opportunity to seek funding for predicate or inclusion equity studies regarding job creation and economic development?
Oh, that's a terrific question. Yeah, I'd be happy to actually set up a separate meeting and take a look at that and share with you some of the specific studies we funded. Definitely on eda.gov, we have some summary information there, but I'd love to talk to your office about, taking a look at that. That sounds very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions out there? We are slated till 10 o'clock and we've got 9 minutes left. We're not going to sit and wait for 9 minutes though. If we don't have any other questions,
That's right.
We would like to just make sure that we have answered all of the questions here. Great opportunity. I loved Ellen's comment. These are exciting dollars that she stated, and we can put that in quotes. Exciting is the right word, where we have the opportunity to provide funding to grow our communities and do things that we have always hoped to do. So please reach out to Ellen. Her email is here on the screen, eheinz@eda.gov. Her cell phone is also available. She is our economic development representative for our state, and what a great opportunity we have. And I don't see any other questions. Ellen, did you have anything else you wanted to state before we end here today?
Yes, definitely. Well, I want to thank you so much, Renee and Team Neo and all
We
of
got one.
Oh, you do? Okay, yeah.
Yes. Before you state that, save that right there. Can any type of business request these dollars?
Great question. We don't fund private businesses. We don't fund private businesses. So we only fund public partners, nonprofit partners, institutions, governmental agencies. So unfortunately, we don't fund businesses, but certainly there might be some resources for you under the Small Business Administration.
So would you recommend that they reach out to you anyway for some of those other resources that might be available?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to connect them if it seems like it would be a good fit for the Small Business Administration. Certainly happy to connect them. Yep.
And the next question is limited liability corporations. Would they be eligible, or LLCs private? I would think they would be, right?
Yeah, typically it has to be a public nonprofit partner. So, but again, I'm happy to look into any more detailed questions that you have. So I know sometimes it just depends on how the organization is formed. In fact, I know sometimes even, a chamber partner might also have, if they're a 501c6, they might have a 501c3 partner. Those are different because those are generally speaking eligible for our programs. But I'm happy to look at those specific questions. Again, we don't fund private businesses and won't fund directly to individuals, but our grants are reimbursement based and do have a lot of public sector partners that we would fund.
All right, they're thankful for that response. Any other questions out there? We have a great partner here in Ellen. As you know, from the very song she selected as one of her favorite hits, Get It Together. That is the spirit of collaboration if I've ever heard it. So leverage her and reach out to her for this knowledge and resources that are available. Ellen, any closing remarks at this time?
Sure. I would just like to say thank you to Team Neo and the Node partners and you, Renee, and to everybody who's working in some way, shape, or form in local economic development. And that can be an economic development director, that could be a planning associate, that could be, a mayor or a commissioner, somebody who's working for a representative's office. I think, there's really nothing better that you can do with your life than to serve the community and help retain jobs and help grow jobs within your communities. And it is a heavy lift. And I've been there during multiple plant closings in a local community, trying to recruit new businesses to the community, trying to stay connected to funds that will, again, create transformational projects for your community. So thank you so much. We don't always have the chance to thank you, but you're the feet on the ground. You're the ones connecting our communities to these dollars. So thank you so much for all you do. And I want to also just just mention too, part of EDA and moving forward is wanting to establish that strong partnerships and pipelines. And I have seen some really incredible partnerships just even in the year alone that I have been here. I've been on the OEDA board for the better part of 10 years, have my economic development certification. But again, really the last 12 months with the pandemic, I have seen some just phenomenal new partnerships take place. Saw some very great projects awarded in Northeast Ohio and all across Ohio. There's some really good projects that didn't get funded. They were very competitive dollars, but if you had a project that didn't get funded with CARES Act, certainly, and you haven't talked to me yet, please reach out and happy to look into, how to make your project possibly get funded or give that support to see how we can give the support to have a stronger application. So these applications are, again, we've got to follow federal requirements. So there are guidelines, restrictions in place, but we're here to help you. I also do a technical review of applications before you can hit the submit button, which our applicants have found that a highly competitive opportunity and a highly productive opportunity, making sure you have some of the right match documentation in place and that you're meeting the elements of the application that will be reviewed and how to strengthen your application. So lots of great resources out there. I'm happy to help. I'm here to serve you and your community. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. This has been phenomenal. Great information. Thank you for your partnership. And to our participants who have joined today, thank you for taking the time to join our October node meeting in the month of November. Don't forget to vote and look for follow-up details and information on this presentation as well as the next meeting that we will have. And thank you for joining. You have 2 minutes back.
Oh, great. Oh, and one last thing, Renee, to less than maybe a few seconds left. If you haven't gone to eda.gov, sign up for the email, the newsletter, and certainly visit that list of 529 Build Back Better applications that came in and find out who in Ohio has applied for those phase 1 funds. So
this is great. Love it. Thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful week and stay warm. Fall is here officially. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.